Welcome back to the Magic Sponge Podcast, miracle cure for all your rugby league injury issues. I'm Brien Senior. I'm the guy behind NRL Physio on social media. My co-host James, he's a physio. He's a footy nuff. He's a Queenslander. It was a rough week to be a Queenslander, particularly a Queenslander who's a Dolphins fan after today, mate. Thankfully, the Bronx got a big win. How are you feeling, I guess, a bit down after Wednesday, but then picked back up with a much-needed victory for the Bronx over the weekend?
It was very down and out by, I guess, Wednesday evening, Brian, that's for sure. But I'm in the Queensland kit still today because, Brian, like Billy said, we're still Queenslanders. So I thought I better rep some Maroons kit again tonight because we're still Queenslanders and we still get it as well. I think, Brian, that can't be understated. On the NRL front, yeah, the Broncos got a win, so it was good to see them back in the winner's circle. A lot of good other games of footy this week. A lot of chaos from a super coach perspective. It's all heating up, Brian. I think the footy's going to get very, very good for these last few rounds. I truly, truly cannot wait. It's getting good.
Yeah, mate. I think even though the Finns lost today, I was actually quite pleased with how they played. They're kind of performing above where I expected them to be, especially with I look at their team list on a Tuesday and I think, Penrith are going to absolutely wallop them. And I still think they, you've got to be disappointed because they probably should have won and closed out the game. But it definitely made me feel it took me from like 0% after Wednesday, got me up to about, 10 or 15%. So I'm climbing up. Hopefully this week we've got a pretty big fantasy comp starting this week, which is going to take me right back up to 100%. So let's go straight to that, mate. The best rugby league fantasy competition is back and it starts this week. Bundy, the NRL, and the NRLW are back with the world's first mixed gender fantasy league, the Bundy Mixer. I know many of you consider yourselves high-level fantasy players, and this is going to test your skill with the stars of the women's game able to be selected alongside the men. It's a really great way to elevate the women's game. As we know, fantasy sports drives a significant amount of interest in rugby league, and with the rapid growth of the NRLW, it's the perfect combo. Plus, it really is super easy to play. It takes like 2 seconds. You only need to pick 6 players each week, 3 guys and 3 girls, and there's no salary caps. So, James, you and I consider ourselves pretty gun fantasy players and big fans of the women's game. So head to mixer.nrl.com to take us on and enter the special league code for Magic Sponge listeners, which is XZMGRYI9, or head to the link in the podcast description. I think that'll be easier than the mouthful of the league description there. There's plenty of prizes to be won. James, we currently have the biggest league on the site at 490 odd entrants, which is pretty cool. We want to try and keep that up till sign up. So anybody who's listening hasn't signed up yet, please jump on. Also, if you jump on via the link, you have to manually go in and actually sign up to the league. So make sure you do that and use our code because you can sign up without jumping in the league. I've had a few people kind of wondering about that. And James, I think for me, the big thing I like about the Mixer, like a lot of people listening play SuperCoach, they play fantasy, and there's a million different podcasts out there who tell you, the sleepers, who to pick. They've got the stats on everything. The thing that I love about the Mixer is especially the women's side of things, there isn't that level of information yet. And I can't wait till there is that level of information. But what it does is it really tests you as a viewer of footy and somebody who follows footy and follows the stats to kind of deep dive in there and try and pick up little point of differences, who you think will be good. We've got a couple coming later in the show, mate. I know you and I pride ourselves on that kind of stuff. And that's the thing that I really love about the Mixer.
I love it for that reason as well, Brian. We are data guys, I will say that. We love our numbers, we love our stats, but we also love rugby league vibe. And I think what's really, really key for the Mixer is you can make a few decisions and choose a few different angles with your male and female, I guess, combinations there. So for that reason, I love it. I live and breathe it. It's a good way to mix things up. Ryan, we have got a stomper of a comp going for the moment in the Magic Sponge, so we're going to flex some muscles there and get a few more people in. Obviously, recruit your friends, recruit your family, even recruit people you don't like. Who cares? Get them all in, stomp on them a little bit, show them who's boss. What I do want to say, Brian, this is a very vibey thing that we've just seen in the media. Sam Bremner of NRLW, New South Wales, Australia fame, she's out of retirement now, Brian. So she had her third child in, was it September last year? So she's had her third child in September last year. And the Roosters have just said, Gordon Baxter's done her ACL. We need someone in here. So who did they get? No other than the absolute jet, Sam Bremner, of, like, I guess, premiership fame, representative football fame. She's putting the boots back on, not even 12 months down the track from having her third kid. Is Sam Bremner, like, one of the most elite athletes kicking around, Brian? Because this is outrageous areas for mine. I just cannot get over the fact that she's like, "Oh, yeah, all good. I'll just come back and I'll just rip. That's just how I'm gonna go." I can't wait for this to come up. She's always been a Bundy Mixer pick of ours as well. So is Sam Bremner in the mix for you, Brian, this year? I can't wait for it.
Mate, you named, Queensland, Australia. I think what she's most known for is being a Bundy Mixer gun. She is so good at the mix. So she is right in the mix for my team at the moment. For anybody who is listening, really interesting friend. She literal friend of the show, Sammy Bremner. So I interviewed her, I think it might have been 2 years ago, about coming back to footy from her second pregnancy. It was about a 2-hour chat. I think it was really, really good. So particularly for any women out there, or any husbands, partners, male, female, who are looking to understand what it takes for, high level female athletes to come back to sport after birth. That's a really, really interesting listen. And I mean, she's going through it all again, like to do it 10 months post. And I don't know how long this has been in the books. Like, I assume not that long, with Corbin Baxter going down last week. But I've got no doubt she'll be in incredible nick, like good fitness, and she'll just come back and kill it. I can't wait. And it won't be long. If it's not week one, it won't be long till she's back in my team, I reckon. So, yeah, I'm really excited for the NRLW to start. Filthy the Finns don't have a team yet. I think my daughter Isabel keeps getting so confused. I tell her that the women's is starting next week, and I say, who are we going for? And she says, the Dolphins. I'm like, damn. So
One day.
yeah,
One
that's
day.
right. Hopefully. But her poppy is definitely trying to recruit her over to the Bronx. Although I got a couple
Yeah,
of
as he should.
got a couple of
as
the
he should.
Titans girls who are trying to reel her into the Titans as well, though.
Okay.
So it's kind of going a bit
Titans
of both
going good
ways.
too.
You
So
know? Yep.
that's probably pretty fair for Isabel. Like, she could be swayed to the Titans there. They've got a hot team. They're full of throbbers, the Titans. My God, they're good.
100%. So it should be good, guys. But we'll later in the show, Bundy Mixer Picks, we'll run through what we're both thinking for week one of the comp next week, and then hopefully we'll see you in the league. Now, onto the show. We're on YouTube. Please subscribe, review, thumbs up. This is where you come for all your injury analysis in the NRL. We loop it all back to SuperCoach, Fantasy, and Bundy Mixer. If you like what you hear, patreon.com/NRL Physio, head on over there. But otherwise, let's get straight into the injury wrap from round 20.
I don't know exactly what he's done. I would have thought it was an ankle, but I'm just guessing. He shouldn't be out for a long period of time. I mean, I'm no doctor. We have to wait for the scans, obviously, but that'd be more positive than negative.
Good to get through tonight, Brian, for round 20 and the aftermath of State of Origin 3. So we'll start with the HIAs firstly. Richie Kennar from the Bunnies and Taine Tuaupiki from the Warriors were HIAs out of this round. Any more detail you want to add to either of those players?
Yeah, just Taine Tuaupiki. It's his second one for the season. Look, like obviously every concussion's different, and they'll both definitely miss next week. But more because he's had two in quicker succession, it just put him at a little bit higher risk of needing a bit longer than a week. Just increases that risk by about anywhere from 10 to 30%.
Very good, Brian. So we'll talk about the Origin wrap-up out of this. Mitch Moses was at biceps rupture, as you put up on the socials there, so he's going to miss the remainder of 2024. And then the other two that are probably noteworthy, especially Dylan Edwards with his PCL injury, and Selwyn Cobbo was the other one for the Broncos there. He missed this week with a groin concern. Hopeful that he should be right for next week. I guess Dylan Edwards is probably the big one here, Brian, because Dane Laurie in the substitution there looked really, really good for the Panthers today. There's a few Supercoach rosters that might still have Dylan Edwards here from when he went absolutely ballistic. How long are we thinking tentatively Dylan might be missing with the PCL injury?
Yeah, mates, it was interesting. This one went backwards and forwards all week. It kind of initially was said to be a high-grade PCL injury, and he was going to miss up to a month. And then there was a report that came out that it wasn't as bad as first thought, so he could miss as little as 2 weeks. But Penrith clarified today that it is a complete rupture, so they're expecting him to be back in about 4 weeks. Usually it's about 4 to 6 weeks, so that's pretty standard. The biggest thing here is performance-wise. You do tend to see guys coming back from a complete rupture take a little bit of time. I mean, Dylan Edwards is an absolute machine, motor that doesn't stop. So, a guy like that, if anybody's going to come back from it really well, it's probably going to be him. But just worth mentioning, there can be kind of mainly direction change, agility, not as explosive, change of direction, those kind of things. So that can be a little bit of an issue coming back from these kind of things. And you can be at an increased risk of in-game aggravation. So if you cop another blow to that knee, that can kind of aggravate it and require you to go off, with a blow that maybe wouldn't have affected you before. But yeah, for Daine Laurie purposes, I was literally, I actually traded him in at a point during this week and then traded him out when I'd kind of heard that, that he was either unlikely to play or in doubt. And I thought, oh no, I won't take the risk on it, especially when there was the report that it wasn't as bad as first thought. But yeah, I think Daine Laurie's a solid point of difference. Like we'll talk about it later. Penrith have got an absolutely beautiful draw, so I don't mind Daine Laurie at all. Mitch Moses bicep rupture, his season is over. I think probably the most important thing to say here is that this is super easy for the medical staff to pick up on. If you haven't seen it on my socials, I put up a photo of Moses' biceps after his rupture and then just a photo of it before, and you can see the gap that's there. So literally that tendon rips off near the elbow and the muscle kind of goes back up the arm. So it leaves like a depression or a divot where your biceps is supposed to be attached down. So medical staff, and you can see the New South Wales doctor doing a test on his elbow and he just shakes his head and says, it's not there. And Moses goes, oh, damn it. So as soon as that happened, I think I had a few people kind of giving me a bit of flack for saying that his season was over before things were confirmed and all that kind of thing. But yeah, as soon as that happens, it's just, it's probably even more accurate than, say, an ACL test, I would say. And then Selwyn Cobbo, minor groin issue, nothing much to worry about, should be fine for next week. Mate, on the Daine Laurie front, you're our SuperCoach guy. What do you reckon? Would you be jumping on him? It is 1 week down, so he's probably only got 3, maximum 4 weeks left. I don't mind it if you've got a few trades in the bank, though.
Yeah, I think if you've got trades in the bank, he could be a nice little cash grab coming off, especially he's going to be over 120 after today, I think, in his score. Panthers looking good. Like you said, the draw looks really nice. They've got all the boys back on deck next week. I really like it. I also want to say, Brian, what about these Penrith boys just playing through PCL ruptures in big games? Nathan Cleary in the grand final last year, Dylan Edwards, Origin 3, both of them getting man of the match. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. I think what's going on at the foot of the mountains there? Are they just built different, to use that term? They have that dog in them?
Mate, all I'll say to that, to one-up you, just because I want to get one back at the New South Welshman for getting one on us. Friend of the show, literal friend of the show, Sienna Lafipo, started at 13 for the Maroons this year, ruptured her PCL, came off and just shrugged it off and went back on. Made the hit up before Lauren Brown knocked over the field goal. Sorry, that was game two. So yeah, mate, it can be done. They're pretty tough, but you have to be tough. And I think the Penrith boys are tough, but there's some quality NRLW Queenslanders out there who do it as well.
Yeah, pretty legit. Raiders versus Warriors was the next game here, Brian. So Adam Pompey out of this one from the Warriors with probably an MCL injury. I haven't heard anything on grading here, have we?
No, but it didn't look good. Like he had to be helped off the field. It looked that typical MCL. I mean, sometimes the ACL can be stressed in those kind of mechanisms. I would hope that's not the case here. He was definitely grabbing more kind of that medial area. I'd be thinking moderate to high grade MCL. So at least 3 to 4 weeks out and potentially like 6 to 10, depending on the grading.
Very good. So Rabbitohs Tigers, no injuries from here. From the Knights Broncos game, Adam Elliott was ruled out pre-game with a calf injury. Not expecting huge amounts of time there on the sideline, but maybe a couple of weeks further. And Bradman Best was a hamstring strain in this game. I don't know if that was same side or contralateral side to the concern he was nursing into the last Origin game here, Brian. And then lastly, for the Broncos, Brendan Piakura with a groin strain as well. So he didn't play out the full 80 minutes for that one. Probably start with, I guess, Adam Elliott's the low-hanging fruit here, Brian. I think we'll start there, hey?
Yeah, minor strain for Elliott. So, yeah, like 1 to 2 weeks out usually. I mean, we've seen Api Coruscant, he's going to be back next week after only missing a week with a minor calf, so that tends to be pretty typical. Brendan Piakura with the groin strain, it didn't look that great. More thinking a bit more than minor for him, potentially like a partial or, well, probably not a complete tear, but yeah, at least potentially a partial tear there. So if so, you'd probably be looking at 3 to 4 weeks on the sideline. So some concerns there, and we'll talk about it later with the Broncos not having too many edge forwards in their squad, which will be interesting. Bradman Best with the hamstring strain. I think this was probably the biggest injury story of the week. Obviously, it's his 4th hamstring issue of the year. He had hamstring tightness out of round 18 that he needed to be scanned heading into Origin camp. He then, according to the telecast, had some hamstring tightness after Origin that he had to have a fitness test on in the days leading up to round 20. The medical staff were kind of a bit 50-50, and Bradman said, no, I'm fine, I can play. But then there's the factor of it's the other hamstring to the hamstring that he had earlier in the year, but they didn't say whether it was the other hamstring to the one he'd been having tightness in. Look, the fact that it's the other hamstring to the one earlier in the year, it definitely doesn't make it quite as bad as a direct ring injury, obviously. But that you hear about us talk about that increased risk of hamstring re-injury, especially in those early days coming back from a hamstring, any kind of hamstring tightness, soreness, strain. That 10 to 30% that we talk about, that exists on both sides. So it's not just a direct re-injury of the hamstring. A hamstring strain on your right side leaves you at an increased risk of hamstring strain on your left. It's not quite as high as your right, but it still is increased. So yeah, look, like it's easy, I think, for everyone to sit here in hindsight now and, say horrible decision and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, the night season was on the line. It's on the line every week moving forward. There is still, we're talking about, even if it's 30%, 7 times out of 10, Bradman Best gets through that game okay. So, look, I still am a big proponent, and we spoke about it a lot heading into the Origin period about these guys who are dealing with soft tissue stuff. Surely the clubs will rest them. We spoke about Nathan Cleary last year, Ruben Cotter the year before, these guys suffering significant hamstring injuries backing up from Origin. So yeah, look, I wasn't the biggest fan of him backing up, and I was quite surprised to see him back up and then to have the injury happen. I mean, once again, the odds were in their favor, but it just, only we're not inside the walls, and we don't know how desperate they were for a win, how desperate they, see it moving forward. But with hamstring tightness floating around, it's just not something that you generally want to play with. They have sort of said they think it's minor, but you're still looking at a 2 to 4 week return to play for that. So yeah, it's just not good news for the Knights all round, hey?
No, I thought it was a little bit surprising as well, given that Dylan Lucas was on the bench. I think he's in jersey 17, and he's got the ability to cover, wing, center, and edge. So I thought, if you had an option to play Dylan Lucas there, maybe you just roll the dice for a week. But you're rolling the dice either way. I think it's just one of those things that happens. And it is what it is, unfortunately, for Bradman Best and the Knights there. So they're going to be pushing it uphill to make the 8, aren't they? They're gonna have to get on like a tear like they did last year off the back of Callum Ponga is the only way it probably can get there. Next game, Brien, was an absolute belter, was the Storm v Roosters. Pre-game, Nelson Asofa-Solomona was ruled out with injury. I didn't have much detail on this one because I know he's been sort of nursing soft tissue hamstring stuff in the past, and there's been a bit of cagey stuff with the Storm and Nelson Asofa-Solomona all year, going back to the start of the year. So I don't know what he's doing there. And then the only other one from the Storm, which I don't expect to be serious, is Grant Anderson on the wing, who had an awesome game actually. Had a hyperextension of his knee right towards the end of the game, but they're been quoted as saying it's not on the side of serious. Is that this current situation with Grant Anderson, Brian?
Yeah, there was an interview with Paps, Ryan Pappenhausen on ABC Radio today, just saying that Grant Henderson had sent a message through to their group chat saying cleared of any structural damage, just a grade 3 carry on. Yep. So that's really good news. I think just worth mentioning with hyperextensions, because This is probably the one injury mechanism that has the widest range of outcomes and is the hardest to give much guidance from my position as, injury analysis and those kind of things on video, because a hyperextension can be anything from like ACL, PCL, tibial plateau fracture, really significant, to something like this, which is just like a bit of bone bruising or soft tissue pinching. But both of those things, A, look horrible, and B, feel horrible for the person on the field. Like anybody who watched that game saw Grant Henderson go down, and he's called it a grade 3 carry-on, but that's pretty typical for most hyperextension injuries. There's not many guys who have like rank hyperextension injuries like that who just kind of bounce back up and they're like, oh yeah, no big deal. More often than not, they're in a significant pain. And I liken it a lot to like lateral ankle sprains, where you see guys roll it really, really significantly. But I always say the old bark is worse than bite. So it looks worse than it actually is. So yeah, I think if there's anybody, who sees me kind of be a bit non-specific when I'm talking about hyperextension injuries in the future, it's not because I'm trying to hide anything from you or be less specific. It's just that mechanisms can be really similar and have such a wide, variety of outcomes. I said in the comments and in the tweet replies to this, I think what saved him, if we're getting real nerdy, is that when he went into full hyperextension, his ankle rolled as he went into hyperextension. So he kind of hit end range, and rather than his foot sticking and all of that force transmitting up through his knee, his ankle rolled. So his ankle kind of absorbed some of that force, which I reckon at the end of the day is probably what saved him from anything significant. And so it's little things like that really interest me as a physio and might interest some people out there. But yeah, certainly from a hyperextension perspective, they are really tough. It can be something small. So more than likely he's dealing with bone bruising. You're still talking about usually 2 to 4 week return to play. So it can still be, quite a few weeks for that bone bruising to settle down. But we're not talking, once again, if it's either of the other things, it's months of recovery, which is really nasty. So definitely good news for him. And then Nas was just called injury, and the Storm didn't really talk about it. I assume it's his hamstring from a couple of weeks ago, but that hasn't been confirmed as yet.
Yeah, it's a funny situation, that one. I was sort of eyeing him off as like a dual front row, second row, because he's bottom out in price. He's only playing sort of 20, 25 minutes, and I was just expecting him to have a much bigger role in that team this year. But anyway, it hasn't been his sort of season there for the Storm. Next game, Brian, was the Finns versus the Dolphins. Another Hamaso masterclass, this one. And tell you what, Brian, the Dolphins between Hamaso and Tavita Pangai are very watchable. So I'm kind of jealous that you do get a bit of watchability there with the Finns. Out of this one, though, Panthers, Paul Alamoti with a forearm fracture, and Jesse McLean was a fractured collarbone from New South Wales Cup as well. Bad news for a couple of outside backs there for Panthers, hey?
Mate, that's the one thing. I don't want to be happy to be here with the Finns for too long, and just kind of be happy with them losing close games. But I think with as I said, when the team list gets named on Tuesday and Kenny Bromwich is starting in the middle, Ray Stone, these kind of guys, which they're good vibe guys, don't get me wrong, but it's Dire Straits in the middle. Tavita's looking pretty good in the middle, granted. But yeah, it's I'm really loving seeing, and Katoa week in, week out, he seems to be getting better. He should have potted a field goal at the end. But I'm trying not to be too much of happy to be here and just kind of, still get pissed when they lose it. But I just, Hammer is just, mate, my hot take, and this is me being a full Dolphins homer, but Hammer, if we didn't have no center options for Queensland, mate, he's right up there with those other boys in Walsh and Ponga at the moment, because I think he is playing lights out footy, which is really, really great to watch. Paul Alamoti with the forearm fracture, he'll be missing at least 6 to 8 weeks. Apparently it was a real nasty one. A few people tweeted me who are at in the crowd, and they said, it was hanging in all sorts of directions. So 6 to 8 weeks for him. And I just included Jesse McLean. We don't tend to talk about New South Wales Cup injuries all that often, but I was looking at his brother Casey McLean as a potential buy, especially with Alamoti out now. And I went, oh, nah, Jesse will come in, because I think Jesse had a concussion a couple of weeks ago or something like that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, he was always above like his brother in the pecking order. But yeah, broken collarbone in the New South Wales Cup. So, I mean, yeah, but look, if you're looking for a downgrade, James, what's your thoughts on Casey McLean? I think the job security there is actually pretty good now.
Yeah, it looks pretty good, doesn't it, when you think about all the other injuries going on there? I'm just trying to think what they would look like at their full clip with Brian Toto back in the mix there. But I guess Toto and Alamoti are probably a straight swap. Tungo's there. He's not going to be moving anywhere. Taruv is the other one who might get that other centre position. So he might be there or thereabouts. It depends on if they feel like Taruv is a better centre spot or, maybe McLean's the better centre option there from Casey McLean's point of view. Casey McLean was playing left centre today, wasn't he, I believe?
Yeah, because
So
Alamoti, effectively it'd be Toto
he's
and
playing right wing.
Taruva wings, Tungo
Yeah,
centre, and then there's another centre spot,
and then there's
is
another
my
one.
thought.
That's the thing.
So, yeah.
Tell
So
you
that's
what,
where I'm
team
thinking
lists on
McLean.
Tuesdays will be really interesting, won't they? Because if you can get him at this point of year for basement price, and he's probably startable, I would say as well, Brian. If you look in the Panthers, look in their run, he's probably startable over a lot of other players that you'd have in your setups, particularly even if you have like the final reserve on him. Because, like you said, the Panthers draw is very, very good at coming. I'd be having a good long look there, I reckon.
Yeah, I was going to I was sold on, I didn't go a few guys this week, so I wanted To'o next week. I was like, yeah, I'm going to get To'o for sure because the Panthers have like a cake run. But with the
Mm.
McLean news, I'm very tempted to go like one of my CTWs down to McLean and then I've only got 4 trades, but like who cares? Let's just roll with it. And that would give me a boatload of cash to go like up to Ponga in a couple of weeks, and then another, somewhere else, do a massive upgrade as well. So, yeah, I've got a few things to think about there. We'll talk about that in Supercoach Corner soon.
Yeah, it's a good call, mate. But the cakewalk schedule for people just thinking about it: Dragons, Knights, Eels, Storm, Raiders, Bunnies, Titans. It's pretty goddamn tasty. And if you can get any part of the Panthers backline there, me and Brian are both holding on to Isaac Tungo for dear life, hoping that Titanic of a train wreck is going to turn around. But anyway, that might be vibes more than anything else on that one, Brian. That's been one of our lesser good options of the season. Manly vs Titans was the second last game of the round. AJ Brimson was ruled out pre-game with a groin issue there, Brian. That was off the back of returning last week and playing less than a full game. And then Lehigh Hopewadi seems like a fractured eye socket there. AJ Brimo, though, I guess interesting, was playing last week, not the full game, with Kenny on the bench, and he was out this week with Kenny getting the full game. Probably a tricky one to sort of figure out here with AJ moving forward. Hey, Brian.
Yeah, mate. I think groins. Yeah, they call them the mosquito injury for a reason. They just buzz around, and you can't seem to hit the mosquito a lot of time. Even though a mosquito and has the double meaning of like a mosquito is not really that. There's not a lot of damage with a mosquito if a mosquito bites you, not like a hornet or a wasp or something like that. So it's annoying, but it's usually not sort of major damage. So he had some soreness after his return game. That doesn't mean he's going to be out for, a super long period of time, but it does mean that I had the question asked in Patreon during the week, would you hang on to him? And I just think either at CTW or fullback, they're just such high upside spots. I would be jumping off, even if he's named next week. I just would be going for somebody who is fully fit and healthy, or relatively at this point of the year with like more upside. I know I love Brimo, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I'd just be going elsewhere at this point in time. Lehigh Hopewadi, about as obvious a broken eye socket as you could find, with the swelling and all that kind of stuff. So he'll be missing, anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks at this point in time. What is your take on Brimo, mate? Would you be holding on or would you be selling at this point?
Oh, depends when you trade it in. If you trade it in last week, it'd be a tough lick to take, wouldn't it? If I had to, I would trade though, Brian. I think that would be my take on things. Keeney's looked pretty good. Looks like Jaden Campbell's locked down the 6th position there. Foreign's probably a reasonable injury risk at the 7th spot. And I don't know what Carter Gordon's up to, mate. I don't know if he's like kicking around Queensland Cup or if he's just training with the squad or what's doing there. I haven't seen him named, so bit of a murky one. I guess the Titans season is pretty much dead and buried as well. Do they put AJ and Colton Wool looking towards next season, or if he's going to miss a few more weeks? I don't know. I'd just be trying to avoid that situation altogether. Even though the Titans, they're putting up points and they're throwing the footy around. they're still going to have weeks in them like this. And I think towards the end of the season, that might become a bit more common. So I'd be looking elsewhere for me personally. Do you want to move on to the last game around here, Brian? After that, we'll go to the Cowboys Dogs. No injuries out of this one, but we want to talk again about Max King, who has been ruled out pre-game with that wrist injury. We spoke about it last week and speculated of what might be, I guess, at play here. Do we know any more detail?
Mate, I unfortunately on the soundboard for the pod, I don't have Hello Darkness, my old friend, but this is where I want to engage it because this made me super sad. I was just getting around Zeus and all the good work he was doing. And Josh Curran's come out today and absolutely put up a score, and which is good. He's in my team, but oh man, it just Max King could have been there putting up 80 points and just riding into the sunset. That was really devastating. But yeah, he'll be about a 6-week return to play. So hopefully back before the end of the season. But obviously, for any draft people even or any classic people, yeah, like he round 26 at best, I think. So if your final is that week, but then even then, he's going to have 6 weeks off footy, so you wouldn't expect him to hit massive scores in his first game or two back. I think he's a sell, but yeah, just really sad, James. It was, I think, our call, I went back and had a look. I think our call was Sean Lane, we completely screwed. We had 3 by the years. Sean Lane was 1 and he was horrible, but we didn't predict an average for him. We predicted a 60 average for Max King and a 75 average for Kiraz. And I think Max King at the moment is like 59.8 or something. And Kiraz is like 74 point something. So I look, 2 from 3 ain't bad, mate, especially after the debacle of Adam Dewey last year. So I think we've done pretty well.
Yeah, I don't think that's the worst. They're the worst shouts kicking around. I'm just going to have a quick look at where Tommy Talau sort of averaging out at the moment as well, because he was another one that I
After
obviously
today, mate.
my flag in the ground. Yeah, he got another meat pie today, so just standard operating procedure there for the good-looking rooster. He's averaging 56 before this week, so that'll be a little bit higher. For a guy who was not even named round 1, I think even if we didn't get Sean Lane right, the fact we've unearthed we haven't unearthed gold there. We've unearthed the most valuable resource ever, and that's someone who's super hot. That's just unearthing a worldie is what we've done this year is in Tommy Talau. So, who needs diamonds? Who needs gold? Just unearth worldies. That's what we're here for.
Love it, mate. Love it.
All right, Patreon questions next, Brian. We'll get straight in. For you to get through tonight, patreon.com/NRL Physio. If you want these questions answered each week, get them into Brian and we'll put our heads together and answer them to the best of our abilities. First question, Brian, was about Ryan Papenhuyzen. Did you hear the interview with Ryan Paps today regarding his foot? What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, mate. Sorry, I didn't play this for you pre-show, so I'll fill you in on what it was. I'm not sure if you were listening to ABC Radio today. Probably not. So I'll run you through it as best I can. So he had that heel issue a couple of weeks ago that I think he missed a week and then he was in doubt and they weren't really sure what was going on. They thought it was just heel bruising. So he explained today that he had scans and it showed like a little bit of stuff on his plantar fascia, which is like the tissue in the let's say the arch of your foot that extends down and then attaches in underneath the pad of your heel, so under the heel of your foot. They saw a little bit of stuff there, but it probably wasn't enough to explain what he was suffering. But then they kind of started playing around with the nerves and they thought it was nerve related. So they started doing effectively diagnostic injections of different nerves that run into his foot. So they were kind of what I would assume is either probably a local anesthetic sort of in different nerves to sort of see. And they got it down to 2 nerves this week and they found the right one. So when he gets an injection into that nerve, it settles it down momentarily, but it still is at an increased risk of aggravation in game. He said it gets sore at different times. And then he also mentioned that he hasn't, outside of those injections, he hasn't been able to weight bear like fully through his heel for the last like 4 weeks, which to me, I mean, hearing that, it's really interesting from a physio standpoint. I think practically for anybody listening, the best thing I can say is that, yeah, if you're considering buying him, the Storm have a really good draw. And he was another one who I considered this week, but I think playing the Roosters kind of scared me off him, thankfully. At this news, I just think once again, fullback is a spot where there are just so many high upside guys who are a bit healthier than probably Paps is. I just wouldn't be risking it off the back of that at this point in time. I mean, you're only getting this information pretty fresh. But in hearing that, mate, if you were someone who is looking to bring Paps in, I think their draw gets pretty soft in the weeks coming up. How does that news kind of affect how you would approach him?
It would make it a firm no from that point of view, Brian. I don't think there'd be any interest for me. I have heard on the, I guess, is it a plantar fascia? What sort of injections can we do for it? Randomly, I was having this conversation with someone at work who is interested in the sports med field, and he is of the opinion that there's some sort of injections that he's been able to do fairly successfully for NRL players when he's worked with NRL teams in the past in the tibial nerve distribution or further down into the periphery there with some of those nerves. So I don't know exactly what they use injection-wise. I don't know if it's local anesthetic or if there's a combo of cortisone now. I'm not really too sure. But he even said that he had like a friend's daughter getting married and she had rip-roaring plantar fasciitis. And she was trying to get down the aisle in heels. And anyway, he did this injection for her on the day. He just like brought it with. And then she like got down the aisle, got through it and all that sort of stuff. But she's like, oh, I had like good relief for like 48 hours. Like, so, like, longer than you probably expect those things to happen, and he's like, "Yeah, it was just a random thing." She's like, "Oh, I can't put my heels on, I can't walk, my plantar fascia is, like, killing me." He's like, "Oh, yeah, I can just inject that, don't worry." And he, like, injected it somewhere, somehow, and made it happen for her, but he has done that success with the NRL guys in the past, so not surprising they're doing that for Pappenhausen. I don't know exactly what they would be doing there specifically, but that would scare me away to roster from a Supercoach point of view there, Brian. I think that would be my takeaway on things.
Yeah, mate, I agree. I think an interesting part here, which you'll love, you just kind of tweaked it. I found someone sent me in our work group chat during the week. We love to send like funny physio videos and all those kind of things of different, and particularly our big thing that we love is like physios who are the gurus. We talk about the gurus all the time, and there was some guy who was his video was that every case of plantar fascia pain is coming from the back. And he's got a method.
Yeah, right.
He's got a method that if you see him, he will fix any plantar fascia pain, any pain in your foot, underneath your foot. He will fix it by treating your back. So a little lesson for listeners. I think my big thing is people ask me about this stuff all the time. You know, send me something. And I'm like, if there is somebody who is promising you they will definitely fix your pain with this one style of treatment for every single case of that pain, that I'm happy to say, and anybody can come and sue me if they want to. That's a low shit. Anybody who says that they have like this uniform fix for every instance of pain ever, that is just, yeah, is absolute crock, and don't listen to it. Social media is the worst for it.
Yep. Fully agree with social media being an absolute dumpster fire, so we can both take that away. Second question here is about a patron who said, "I've ruptured my bicep and been told it's about a 4 to 6 month return to footy. How on earth is Adam Reynolds back in the timeframe that he's back in?" I don't know how long Reynolds has been missing, Brian. Firstly, how long's Reynolds been out for in total? I was just happy to see him out there today. And I guess why would someone be longer than an elite athlete? What's the difference?
Yeah, I think we've had iterations of this question a million times before. So Reynolds is back in 11 weeks, so about 3 months just before it. This patron's been told 4 to 6 months. How is he back then? Yeah, look, like I say this all the time, and I think it should almost be well, it is in all my bios. Like I have that little warning image about, you know, I'm not assessing the patient. It's just general advice and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the main things, these are the best athletes in the country. So or in the world sometimes, they are starting from a higher base level of health and fitness. We spoke about Novak Djokovic last week. Yeah, when guys are in peak, you know, like fitness, they just can hit the ground running a lot better with rehab and return a lot quicker. They're getting around the clock treatment is a massive thing. So, you know, they're getting treatment multiple times a day, you know, and that was probably the smallest factor of all these three factors, but that is a big one. And then the other thing, it's his full-time job. It is his full-time job to rehab this injury. So he doesn't have to fit it in around work. He can do his rehab exercises once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, however many times he needs to do it. He is sorting out his diet. He's sorting out his sleep. All of those things are all tailored towards him recovering from this injury. us mere mortals who have to go to work every day and do the grind, we don't get that luxury. So it's a combination of those three things would be the biggest thing.
Question number 3, Brian's about Brendan Piakura. If he's out, who do the Broncos replace in at the edge position there? We are light on players here, Brian. Do you have any good insight into that, or do you want me to lean into this with my Bronx jersey on?
Well, mate, the question has there been any Jaden Hunt updates? So Jaden Hunt had a broken hand, I think, about 4 weeks ago, and was said to be out for 5 to 6 weeks. So he might be back soon. So he could be potentially an option. But other than that, I don't know about the depth chart of the Bronx. I'm definitely going to throw to you because I think you're going to have a better idea than me in terms of who you reckon is going to be named on an edge next week if Piakura is out.
Well, firstly, in the second row position, it's not great. Let's put that out there straight away. So Jaden Hunt, I think, has played there a little bit this year and it wasn't fantastic. He's probably touch or go. Jack Juchevsky, who's come down from North Queensland, is out as well. I think he had a forearm fracture a few weeks ago, Brian, but he'd still be miles and miles and miles away. It's probably looking like a Corey Oates type situation to me, as much as that is going to be a bit of a bizarre one. But you could sort of make an argument the Broncos' outside backs are pretty much at full health. If Selwyn's back next week, Corey probably doesn't get a starting jersey there. He might play on an edge. You might see Wilson play a few minutes there to start, perhaps, and mix in through that position. Maybe Coven Harrington goes there. Just anyone except Pat Carrigan, for God's sake, just take Pat Carrigan away from that position and keep him in 13 where we so desperately need him. I think that'd be my takeaway on things where they are at the moment. Can't see really too many other options. I kind of wish, Brian, that Tevita Pangai Jr. was in our top 30 squad and he wasn't at the Dolphins. That really hurts my feelings, but you guys get the luxury of seeing Tevita play every week when we don't, unfortunately. Question number 4 here, Brian. Probably not much else to add there on the Piakura situation. Is about Reece Walsh. So he had strapping on his lower back, which radiated out to his hip, actually, by the look of things. Do you think it's something to be worried about, or just soreness after Origin? My sort of initial eye of this one, Brian, was a lot of strapping on the iliac crest, which looked like a hip pointer, which would probably explain why he was pretty sore through Origin and not carrying the ball back with that much vigor. Was that a fair call?
Yeah, you keyed me in on this. I got this question. I hadn't seen it. You sort of let me know. I went and had a look, and it looks like a hip pointer strapping. So they strap it round the back to go to the hip, and a hip pointer is just a bruise on the hip at the end of the day. He looked like he was carrying a whole bunch of bumps and bruises during Origin. Another reason why I stupidly didn't buy him this week. But I'd say just a hip pointer, so nothing to be too stressed about moving forward, I don't think.
Yeah, sort of week to week at worst, but hopefully, I don't know when the Broncos play next week, what their turnaround's like. The short turnarounds are always the tricky ones there in a guy like Reece. Last question was about Chance Clockstar. When do you think he will be back, Ryan? I can't remember where we're up to with Chance.
Yeah, round 22, I think, is where the Warriors expect him. Look, it could, I doubt it's going to be next week. I'd say round 22 to round 23-4 would be my range. I think if I planted my flag, I'd say round 23 is probably the most likely, but round 22 is definitely an option there as well. So I think this question might be tailored around like RTS as a potential buy, maybe. I think like with Taine Tuaupiki out, problem with the Wars is like Taine Tuaupiki's out, but also Pompey's probably going to be out as well. So they're down a center. They're down a fullback. Rogers got to go somewhere. Does he go back to center? I'm not sure what the was like. SJ maybe not far away. Does Tamari Martin go to fullback or Chanel Harris go to fullback? Their team list next week is going to be really interesting because I'm not sure. There might be some Warriors fans listening who are, screaming from the rooftops. So I'm forgetting someone, but I know Rocco Berry. He's got a similar issue to like Tommy Flegler with the nerves that run out of the neck down into the arm. So there's no telling when he's going to be back. So I think RTS for me probably not the greatest buy, just with the uncertainty around it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is pretty uncertain. It's not a bad shout. I don't know how they're going to shape up next week. I can't. Is Rocco Berry that far away? I can't remember where Rocco Berry was up
No,
to.
it's just up in the air, mate. It's up in the air. It's similar. Like, it's not as bad. Like, Tom Flegler's a really, really bad case, don't get me wrong. But yeah, we initially thought it might have been a burner where it got, but I think there might be some neural damage or disc involvement, that kind of thing. So it could be, it could be next week. It could be season over. You just don't know with those.
Yeah. Well, you think you just got to play your best players in their best spots, and I think RTS is the best fullback on that team. You could probably sub Piakura in for the centres or Capewell in for the centres, maybe from a week-to-week point of view, if you just needed to scrape through for a week or two, because the Warriors got a decent amount of depth in the forwards compared to other teams. I guess you could get a couple of their guys to shift from the middle to the edge there with like Barnett and even who was the other one? Jackson.
Yeah, forward.
Ford, who could go out there as well. Sorry. So maybe that's the go, is maybe just get those guys to an edge, maybe get an edge guy like Piakura or Capewell out to the centres perhaps. That would be probably the way that I would play it there, Brian. That'd be my thoughts.
I like it, mate. I like it a lot. Let's go into it, mate. The first one of the season. I'm very keen. We'll get to Supercoach Corner in a second. First, we are going to go our Bundy Mixer picks. Mate, just a quick rundown for people wondering on the scoring. So it follows NRL fantasy scoring. For any Supercoach people out there, it's a little bit different. I won't run through every single stat and those kind of things, but I would say overall attacking stats are probably a bit less valuable, more like looking for those base stat kings. Kicking is really valuable. So for halves, like kicking, goal kicking, these kind of things, really, really valuable as well. So yeah, look, what I would aim for as a base score from most of your players is 50. I think if you're looking for players, if you can get a 50 score, I probably want more like an 80, 75 to an 80 out of the guys who I'm going to boost, which is double my score. So you like to Cleary, I want like a 75 or an 80, I would hope every week. But all the other guys, I'm definitely looking for around that 50 to 60 score. If I get a 60 to a 70, then I'm over the moon with most of my players. So that's kind of what I'm looking for from my players week in, week out. James, hit us with your lineup. Who you going for? A couple of little tasty ones here. I like it. We've got a bit of variety in our teams too, which will be good.
Yeah, a little bit of variety to start off things, Brian. So I've got a team full of throbbers, just FYI for those listening along. So I can't wait to take this competition out. Firstly, we're going to start off with the 9 position. So I've got Lauren Brown here. She's a goal kicking 9 for Queensland, Origin gun. But the only thing that I thought about here was she was actually playing in the halves of the Gold Coast last year. And I think Brittany Brayley Nardi might have been floating around. So she might not see 80 minutes. If that's the case, depending on what team lists say, Emma Manselman might be my backup option here, who played pretty consistently full games of footy for the North Queensland Cowboys. I think the Cowboys will probably be better this year. Ja'Kai Whitfield's been a massive get for them, so I think she could absolutely blow it apart. But Emma
Big
Manselman
favourite
might
of the
actually be
show.
my selection here. Oh,
Whitfield,
absolutely, like one of one stuff with Ja'Kai there. So I think Manselman might be my choice at 9 potentially. She's got the good little kicking game, creative, and she plays the full quid of minutes and tackles her heart out. So I really like her as an option at the 9 position. In front row, obviously the big ones here are sort of like your Georgia Hales, your Samaima Taufas. I think Millie Boyle in years gone by, or Millie Elliott as she is now, were guns, but I've got Samaima Taufa. She's been a bit forgotten about because she didn't play Origin this year. I don't know why she didn't play Origin. I don't know if there was outside commitments there, she couldn't make it, or what's going on there. But at the Raiders, she's going to be playing huge minutes. So I think she's a must-have in the mid position. On the edge, I've gone with Keon Kolomatangi. He's playing middle for the Bunnies and putting up heaps of base stats there. So I like him being able to be selected as an edge position player, but get the middle, I guess, base numbers. So that's why I've gone Keon at that position there. And in the edge position, I think having a guy in that spot, they can far outscore most of the other female options there as a general rule. So you can sort of pick and choose how you want to do it, but that's the way I've generally done it. Nathan Cleary picks himself. I don't think we need to talk about Cleary as a half selection. He's probably like the best in this competition at that position by quite some distance. In the centres, same again, Isabel Kelly, she selects herself. It's either her or Jess Surgis. I think they averaged 54 each last year, so you could make an argument. Maybe Jess is the selection there, Brian. We've talked about her a lot on the sponge, and if her boyfriend's form is anything to go off, maybe we shouldn't be sleeping on Jess Surgis. She's 0.1% owned at the moment compared to Isabel Kelly, who's 17% owned. So there's a good question is, do you go Jess Surgis off the back of one of the great seasons by Tommy Talau, if everything's humming along there on the home front, maybe Jess is getting slept on in the centre spot here for the Roosters. She's probably a bit more boom and bust in her weeks than I guess Isabel Kelly has been historically, but I might even flick that over to Jess Surges now because I've just talked myself into it just on vibe alone there. And I guess to round things off for my team, I've got with Scotty Drinkwater. I think Reece Walsh isn't kicking goals anymore. If like we're looking at what to do next week, I guess like next week, if you had the Cowboys v the Sharks, they've got a lot of games at home. I think Drinky's a pretty good spot there to get things going. So that's how I've constructed my team as it stands for the moment, Brian. Lauren Brown, I think if she's goal kicking and playing 9 is a must, but Menzelman's my backup option there. And then Isabel Kelly or Jess Surgis, that is a coin flip scenario. And I think when you look at Jess Surgis, 0.1% rostered, maybe that's the go. Maybe Jess is the play. Do we doubt Jess? We didn't doubt her early in the year. It's come up trumps for us.
No, mate, I like it. I've constructed my team very much along that line of like if there's a group of players who I kind of value at a similar level, it's like pick the lowest ownership just to kind of try and mix it up a little bit because you've got to look for those point of differences in the mix. So I totally agree with you. I think what I'll be doing, I've got Kelly there for now. I think the vibe of Jess Surgis, Tommy Talau, I think we've got to do it. Like, you know, I'm going to say friend of the podcast, Tommy Talau, even though he's never been on the pod before, but we're just going to do it anyway. I just think if we said in the preseason that Jess Surgis is not going to pick a dud to be her partner, and so she picked Tommy Talau. Well, I'm going to flip it around, mate. Tommy Talau's not going to pick a dud to be his partner, so he's picked,
Awesome.
you know, he's picked Jess Surgis. So I think we got a sub her in there. From my hooking position, I've gone Damien Cook. He's goal kicking now, which I never thought. I mean, I didn't even know he could goal kick, but yeah, he's only at 5.8%. He's coming off 79 points this week for fantasy scoring. So yeah, I just can't pass that up at this point in time. Front row, I've gone Simona Taufa, Georgia Hale, her and Millie Elliott are the three, as you say. Georgia Hale's at 42% owned at this point in time, whereas Taufa's only at 2%. So for me, look, Georgia Hale, I think, once again, you know, you've got not a lot of middle competition at the Titans either. I don't think Sienna Lafipo is going to be right for round one, unfortunately. So Georgia probably doesn't have much competition there for that 13 jersey for minutes anyway. So, but I just think Taufa at 2%, and as you say at Canberra, she's just got to play huge minutes. Unless there's an injury there that we find out during the week, I think Taufa's going to be my play there. Mate, at Edge, I'm so surprised because she is one of your favourites, I know. Olivia Kernick, mate, she's low ownership, so she's only at 5% ownership, where someone like Yasmin Clydesdale's at 55%. But the big thing is, mate, like I watched those Women's Origins games really carefully. Kernick was absolutely lighting it up as a 13, like ball playing, putting people through. I think she's going to play there for the Roosters. So you're getting someone who's playing on an edge, a bit like you're saying with Keon, playing on available in the mix on an edge, but playing in the middle. I reckon she's going to be playing in the middle and absolutely lighting it up. So she's one for me. I think, yeah, she can average 55 to 60 if she gets a few attacking stats, which would be very tasty. Cleary picks himself. We're now saying Jess Surgis picks herself. And then my smoky is Dane Laurie at fullback. I think the next month for the Panthers, you read out their draw. It's just going to be, and I think they're getting most of their Origin guys back next week. Yeah, I just think they're going to put on a bit of a statement leading into the finals. I think there's a few teams who are going to come up against a pretty big score, and I could see that, really starting with the Dragons this week. Laurie scored 68 today against the Finns, and I think he could go even bigger next week. So he's my little tasty one. I think I'm going to go Cleary for the boost, and then I might even really back my heart and just go a Kernick with the boost as a little tasty. If she's named at 13, I'm going to go her at the boost as well. That's where I'm at. Mate, hit me with your SuperCoach options now. We both were kind of middle of the road this week with SuperCoach. It was, not owning Turbo hurt us a bit this week.
Yeah, it did. I was pretty happy still this week, Brian. So it's only 11:15 for me at the moment, but I was too short. So with Olakau'atu out, I didn't have Coruscant or Jeremy Marshall King, and I also had 5 players on the bye. So it was obviously Dill Brown, Cartwright, Iro Militalo, and Britton Nickera. So I had a lot of people missing this week. So even being too short putting up that, I'm pretty happy with that because this could have been an absolute brain wreck of a week. So what I did this week was I bought in Nathan Cleary because I needed someone to skipper, and I got Ruben Garrick as well because, like I said last week on the show, I wanted to cover him in round 22 with Iro through that centre wing and fullback spot, just to flick him in between. So it looks amateur hour now, not getting Turbo in because it's going to be about 800 grand. And I thought, him with a break even of 70, maybe he could just go there or thereabouts. But he's just come back and looked the absolute business. Tom Turbo, hasn't he? So sadly, didn't have him in. This week, I don't think there'll be any trades made for me, just given that Turbo will be the only one to bring in. But then he's got the round 22 bye. So he'd only be in for this week for the Roosters. So hopefully he can just go small-ish this week and not be too out of reach for me in the weeks to come. So I don't think I'll make any trades this week unless I'm a player short. So the only one might be at hooker. If I have to be a player short there again, I might just bring in Tom Starling. He'll net me about 250 grand of cash. He's playing 80 minutes. He's scoring mid-50s. That's as good as I can ask for at this point in time of the year. So then I guess moving forward, the option will be to upgrade one of my half positions and move Jaden Campbell to 6. I guess in terms of people to move on, Brian, who do you want to ditch if I had to bring in Turbo? I guess Dill Brown, Sam Walker, or Lockie Galvin are the guys. But I need to survive a few weeks and hopefully they don't get injured. Injury will make my decision for me. But if you had to choose out of those 3, who would you be choosing? I'm sort of going down the ship with Sam Walker, but I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, just given the Roosters raw that'll be coming up. Who do you like to move on out of that bunch there? It's probably Lockie Galvin, isn't it, really?
Yeah, Lockie Galvin, but Dill Brown, mate, like their draw is not good. Like they are, like he's without Moses now, so that probably helps him a little bit. Like maybe they'll focus in on him, but yeah, I think it's a coin flip between Dill Brown and Lockie Galvin. Like Lockie Galvin scored 100, this week, and they still, like the Tigers, they're not gonna, be favourites any weeks really at the moment. So all their games are hard games, you could argue. But yeah, I think you give it a couple of weeks and see how Dill Brown goes without Moses. But yeah, I wouldn't mind moving on either one of those guys really.
Yeah, so the Tigers aren't too bad. So they've got Warriors, Cows, Newcastle Souths, Manly Parrots. Not like a horrendously bad draw. Like they're still not going to be favourites in any of those ones, like you said there. But like we say for fantasy purposes, Brian, like defense doesn't really matter. If you're in a shootout, then that's all good for a guy who's playing 6. And I think Lockie Galvin had 24 in offloads today, didn't he? I think from memory, he had a lot of offload stats, so he's going to be in and around things. A few guys have got my eye on here, Brian. So I don't have many trades left, but Helam Lukey, Scotty Sorensen is a big pod of 2 guys in the second row I kind of like coming up. Val Holmes is going to be in the low 600s this week. AFB's in the low 600s as well, scoring well. Joey Tapine is playing big minutes. Tom Starling at hooker. Maybe RTS if he's at fullback as well might be Porter difference worthy. They're kind of guys I've got my eye on separately to Turbo and Ponga. They're probably the big 2 for the run home. I think Ponga's especially a must-have after like round 23, but there's part of me that just feels like, this week and next week, if I don't have anyone that's injured, then I don't really want to make a trade. I'm just going to try and just cool my jets for a little bit of time and hope that I've got enough troops to survive from round 23, round 24 onwards and try to scrape home a few more points later. That's sort of how I see it at the present. If there's, guys that are fit, then there's no point in moving them on. Even if it is in the situation for like a Turbo this week, I can't really justify it. And then I guess Ponga's on bye, so he might be in next week or week after moving forward. He's still going to shed a bit of coin there. So I guess that's the play, isn't it? It's like, who do you like for the run home? And moving in for fullbacks is probably the big one. But Scotty Sorensen is one I was just looking at. He's priced in the mid 5s, I think. And if he's starting for the Panthers, remember he got really hot last year and averaged almost like the mid 70s for a period there, didn't he? So I just wonder if he's a reasonable little point of difference for the run home, Brian. I just wonder about Scotty Sorensen. Do we go back to the well there?
Mate, I don't mind it at all. I'm a big Scotty Sorensen guy, and as I said, like I'm looking to get any part of Penrith that I can at the moment. Like
He is hot as well, isn't he?
my
He's a hot looking dude. He's a rooster.
I can't deny that. So
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, I'm not against getting in any Penrith guys, especially someone who's going to be locked into, you would assume, 80 minutes every week, playing on an edge there at a pretty good price. Yeah, I really like it. I think, well, my two trades this week, so I got 1141. I brought in Cleary, silly boy for avoiding Turbo last week and Walsh this week, then even having Dane Laurie in my team and bailing on that. I think what I've learned this week is don't be a coward. Just go with what your gut says, which, trying to be too cute, just go with your gut. And if it doesn't work out, then you just, whatever, you went with your gut. There's not much worse a feeling than not ignoring your gut and then it goes well. It sucks. But yeah, I'm thinking Wishart out for To'o at this point. I was going to bring To'o in today if he played, but obviously didn't back up. But I think Wishart is probably coming to the end of Munster's sounding like he'll be back next week or the week after. So, I mean, Storm have got a pretty soft draw. So if Munster's not named next week, I'll struggle. But I'll struggle to sell Wishart because I still think there's some upside there. But yeah, I'm thinking either To'o or McLean. I think even just in talking about him on here, I really don't mind. I've got 4 trades left, whatever, just going down to McLean and then having 2 upgrades, potentially up to, maybe I can go up to To'o with one and up to Ponga with the other in a couple of weeks. That could be a nice little option. So yeah, a few things to think about there, but I like a few names there that you've mentioned. Val in the low 600s, although once again the Cows have got a pretty tough draw as well. AFB's at a good price. Yeah, I think if you've got trades, unlike us who've got little to none, I think you're in a good spot because I think there's some really good buys coming up. But yeah. Look, I'm still going to burn my trades even though I've got 4 left because I like playing that way, James, and I know you do too. So it might not get us 50 grand this year, but it'll get it for us one of these years coming, I'm sure.
I think that's always the way to play, mate, isn't it? I think you just go balls to the wall, and if you really fall flat, then you just say, "Well, I got stitched up by someone. It wasn't my fault." It's easy to blame other people, isn't it? It's always. I feel like Ricky Stewart in a press conference. It's never my fault. It's never my team's fault. It's always someone else that stitched us up. That's the way I always play it.
It's like the old diggers.
Deflect.
Yeah, the old diggers down at the pub who tell me, they could have made NRL. They could have been an NRL star. It's just that one knee injury that that stitched them up. That's us. It was just that one, that one trade or that one stupid Adam O'Brien or Anthony Seibold coaching decision that just cost us, mate. It was, they went against logic. But look, guys, that's a wrap for this week. If you like the pod, give us a review, recommend to a friend. If you want more info like this, patreon.com/NRL Physio. But get keen on the mixer. It starts this week. Get on over there. Get into it. I'm super excited. And as I said, I just love, obviously vibes are super cool, but I think it really does test you in terms of, going in and trying to figure out where are the NRLW fantasy stars. Where are they? Because you're not going to be able to jump on, to a site like NRL SuperCoach Stats, or there's plenty of, like SuperCoach pumps out so much good content. NRL Fantasy pumps out a heap of good content. You got places like SC Playbook and these kind of things. They pump out a lot of good stuff as well. There's just not that with the NRLW. So you've got to try and figure it out for yourself, which I really like. I like kind of testing myself in that way. And it's not just stats, it's also the eye test too. So then watching games, having a look at players, are they any good? Yeah, I love it. I think it's really good and I'm keen for it this week, mate. So at the very least, even if I don't win our league, as long as I beat you, that's the most important thing.
It's always a way, and it's always a measure of a bloke. And I would say, Brian, just to finish up, who are you most looking forward to watching in the W this year? Who are your top 5 athletes that you just cannot wait to see go around this year? I've got a few in mind, but I just want to just test you here to see what you reckon.
Mate, so Whitfield for me is she's my footy crush at the moment. I haven't seen much of her in the lower grades so far, but yeah, really, really liking her from last season. So I think I think she can score a bunch of tries for the Cows up there. Olivia Koenig, I said, a big Koenig guy, probably off you. You kind of keyed me onto Koenig last year, and started watching her, and she is just so silky with the ball in hand. Keely Davis, I think at the Bronx, she'll be the starting 13. She was this close to being in my mixer side because I think there are minutes to be had in the middle at the Bronx. I think her coming in, she's a Queensland Origin player. She's a young gun. I really like the look of her. Yasmin Clydesdale is always a favourite of mine as well. She's great on the edge for the Knights. And then Sammy Bremner, can't go past her.
Yes,
If she comes
awesome.
back, that is just going to be all time 10 months post giving birth to her third. I could literally name 20. I'm really into the NRLW. I can't wait. So it'll be really good. What about you, mate? Who's your 5?
Yeah, Nicole Whitfield's the top of the tree here. She's got the gold medal for the person I cannot wait to see. If she's playing fullback for the Cowboys up there, my God, that is going to be probably straight into my
She'll
mixer
make
setup.
30 runs a game. 30 runs, I reckon.
Easy.
Man.
And about 50 tackle breaks. She's such a freak athlete. She's a gun. And just jets. When you see someone who just is so goddamn fast and you see it and you're like, this person has jet. So there's her, Berry from the Dragons, another one who's got absolute jet. So Tegan Berry there, who scored so many long range tries last year, and they were box office. So they're probably top 2. Another one who goes coast to coast all the time, Jamie Chapman on the Gold Coast. She did it for the Blues. She got 3 tries in the grand final last year in a losing game. So she sort of did what Ezra Mam did and lost in that game. So she's another one who I think is the absolute business. Outside of that, I think Lauren Brown, off the back of her Origin series, she just showed what an absolute gun that she is. She's really the spiritual leader of the Queensland side in waiting that I can see. I know Ali Brigginshaw is still there, but I think once she passes the torch on, it's really Lauren Brown's team. She's a 9. She's a goal kicker, plays big minutes, good ball in hand. She's good, general play kicking. I can't wait to see how she goes again for the Titans. And I guess for the Broncos, I've always been a Julia Robinson fan. She's a gun. We forget about her a little bit because she gets stuck on the wing and she doesn't get as much ball there as when they were flying, but she is such a good player. Romy Teitzel as well for the Bronx. I quite like Romy. I know that your daughter likes Romy as well. So
Isabel's
they're probably
favourite
my
player,
5, mate. Yeah, they're probably my 5. I always love Keely Davis from the Roosters there because she'd play 9. But they always play her at 13 and mix her around a little bit. I still think she's New South Wales' best 9 there, Keely Davis. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's happening there, but I always rated her as a 9. But yeah, it might be Lauren Brown time there at the 9 spot, mate. I love people who play hooker, and I think Lauren Brown looks like the absolute business here. How?
Mate, I love with Lauren Brown how she spoke about she really works so hard on her kicking because she knows that it's not something that is probably super accomplished in the women's game. There's so much of the women's game that's gotten so good really quickly, but she makes the point that, goal kicking numbers aren't that great, field goal, numbers aren't that great. General play kicking isn't that great. There've been a few girls who have spoken about potentially getting a smaller ball for the women's game just because of the different builds of the girls, different hand sizes, those kind of things. But until then, Lauren Brown's just I'm going to be the best kicker in the comp. And I think it makes her super valuable. I love that. And then I can't end the show without talking about our favorite NRLW player. And I can't believe we haven't mentioned her yet. Shania Power. For those who didn't listen to the show last week, Shania Power runs out every week with tape on both her wrists. On one, it says rum, and the other one, it says Coke. And that is just fantastic.
It's the best.
That is.
End of sentence, end of paragraph. It's the best.
Yeah, we'll finish the show on that. Up Shania Power and up the mighty Redcliffe Dolphins.